everybody. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, Choosing Your Education Pathway. We are going to explore some tools to help you choose your education pathway today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We will have a live Q&A at the end. In addition to the live Q&A, we have taken the questions that were asked in the registration form. So we will go over some of the frequently asked questions from the registration, but you will be able to answer some questions at the end. So again, please save those for the end. So my name is Marit Solom, and I'm a management and program analyst for education service on the digital engagement team. Just a little bit about me. I started working at the Milwaukee Medical Center as a vocational rehabilitation counselor in 2011. So hopefully we have some people from Wisconsin in the house. I also worked for VBA as a vocational rehabilitation counselor and an employment coordinator, helping veterans find employment. I joined Education Service in 2019 as an ELR for the great state of Wisconsin. And now I work on the digital engagement team. Just a little bit of a personal history. My grandfather was an Army vet in World War II. I currently reside just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but have also lived in Texas, Illinois, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. So today we have a variety of topics to cover. We're going to cover getting started, choosing your education pathway, and then some next steps. So first off, getting started. So first, I would like to talk to you a little bit about O-Net. So O-Net is the nation's primary source of occupational information, and it has a wide variety of things you can use O-Net for. And O-Net is sponsored by the Department of Labor, so it's very accurate information about occupations. Specifically today, I just want to talk a little bit about the O-Net Interest Profiler. So this is where you can get started in looking at your skills and interests. It helps you do an assessment, and you can find a future occupation that interests and excites you. And it only takes about 30 minutes to complete the assessment. So there are a lot of different ways that you can take this assessment. You can print it out and take it with paper and pencil. It can be taken on the web. So there's a few different ways that you can take it. There's a little screenshot on the right-hand side of this slide of doing the web-based or the paper and pencil option. And then this can be self-administered and self-interpreted. And it can be used just alone to determine your interest areas, or it can be used with other O-Net career exploration tools. The results can be directly linked to over 900 occupations that are found on O-Net online. And again, maximum time it takes is 30 minutes, could take as little as 10 minutes. So it's pretty fast. It's not something that you have to take a whole day to do. It's very fast. So after you do the O-Net assessment, or maybe you already know what your interest areas are, you're going to want to plan backwards. So you're going to want to determine what school or program is the best choice to pursue this goal. So when I was pursuing my degree as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, I started looking at job postings very early on when I was looking at becoming a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I would invite you to start doing that even before you enroll in a school or program, to look at the different job titles, job descriptions, and what the industry is looking for in terms of your interest area. So I started doing job applications on USA Jobs when I was still in my master's program, just to try and get a little bit ahead on knowing what was going to be asked of me, and looking at jobs on Indeed and things like that. So you're going to want to really move backwards. The military occupation specialty skills matching tools are also available. There is a link. And as we kind of go through these slides, Chris is going to be posting some links in the chat for you all that reference some of the links to the slides that we're going through. So The other thing that if you feel a little bit overwhelmed about this process, going through and identifying your interest areas, each job center has a veteran representative. And so there's job centers in all the states, and every single one of them has a veteran representative present to work with veterans to help them with identifying their career goals. And so Chris will drop a link to the Finding Your Local Job Center in the chat, so you can look up where you can go to get the help that you might need if you need to have some assistance with this process. So next, we're going to talk about, after you've looked at your skills and interest areas, choosing your education pathway. There are a wide array of degrees that you can look at getting under your VA benefits. So there's a certificate program that's typically going to be just particular to a job or industry. And that's just going to be anywhere from a few weeks to several months to obtain that certificate. The next type of degree that you can obtain is an associate's degree. Generally, associate's degrees require 60 hours of training and 2 years of full-time attendance. After the associate's degree, we also have a bachelor's degree. That's typically going to require 120 credit hours of training and 4 years of full-time attendance. And the bachelor's is going to be required if you plan on attending a graduate or professional degree. There's also the master's and postgraduate degrees. This is going to be 1 to 2 year graduate programs. I have seen even graduate programs up to like 4 years, but that's going to provide this master's degree. And some master's degree are offered full-time and some are part-time. When I got my master's degree in vocational rehabilitation counseling, I did it online part-time while I was working full-time. So there's typically a lot of different options out there for the master's. The last type of degree that I'm going to talk about is the doctoral degree, doctorate program. This is like the highest academic degree in a field of study, and that's going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 years of studying. Sometimes people only think about the degrees I just described on the previous slide when they think about their VA education benefits, but there are some additional training opportunities. There are non-college degree programs. Those can be truck driving, cosmetology schools. You're not going to actually obtain a college degree, but it's going to offer you like the training that you need to become proficient in the industry that you decide to go in. We also have on-the-job training programs. There are a lot of these set up at like different federal agencies that offer you the opportunity to use your education benefits to get up to speed on the job. A lot of times in the Veterans Benefits Administration, they offer this for claims representatives that are processing claims, veteran service representatives. I know Social Security offers some of these options too. There's a pretty wide range of on-the-job training opportunities that are available that you can use your benefits with. The other type of training is apprenticeship. A lot of people don't think of that as being covered under the VA education benefits, but it is. We have a lot of people that do apprenticeships in the trades. There's also some emerging apprenticeships in non-trades that they've set up in different states. I know Wisconsin has a lot like childcare worker, food service worker, different types of apprenticeships that are deemed by their state as apprenticeship programs. We also do provide flight training. The flight training does require that you have a private pilot's license before VA can help with any flight training. So that's just something to be aware of. And then there's also licensing and certifications. So if you need a license or certification to get a job in your field, then we can help with that. Typically with the licensing and certification, you pay for the licensing or certification, and then you submit paperwork to be reimbursed for that. So the different types of schools that you can attend, there's community colleges. Those are typically going to offer those associate's degrees, those 2-year programs. Then there's college and universities. Those are going to do the undergraduate and graduate degree programs. And then there's different like types of colleges and universities. There's like the public universities, though. University of Minnesota is a public funded institution. There's private nonprofit. Those are going to be primarily funded through a combination of tuition and fees. And then there's a private for-profit. Those are more of profit-seeking businesses and funded through tuition and fees. And sometimes those have a little bit higher tuition rate than the public or nonprofit. And so there is a program to help paying for those higher costs called Yellow Ribbon. There's also technical and trade schools, and those are those post-secondary institutions that provide students with the technical skills or trade to prepare them for the specific occupations. So those are the different types of schools. And then next slide, we're going to focus a little bit on the different types of learning. So you can go online, and just a note about online, the VA education benefits rate differ by school, program type, degree type, and learning track. And if you only go online, the payment for that is going to be 1/2 of the national average. So just a note that if you do choose to go to school completely online, that is going to impact your housing allowance. They also offer hybrid opportunities. That's going to be where you do some classes in residence and some classes online. And typically, if you have at least one course in residence, like in person, then you can qualify for that monthly housing allowance, the full monthly housing allowance. And then there's the in-person full-time and the in-person part-time. And so those are the different types of learning that can be utilized under the VA education benefits. So just some of the next steps that you're going to want to make sure you do if after you've gone through and you've assessed your skills and interest areas and you've like learned about the different types of schools, you're going to want to identify some different schools that you can research. So you're really going to want to do the research on the schools. So if you look at some of those job postings for different types of jobs in your field and industry, you're going to want to try and understand maybe if you have like a top 10 companies that you want to work for after you're done, where do those companies recruit from? They sometimes specifically recruit from certain schools. So you're going to want to understand that before you make decisions on where you go. You're also going to find out what the reputation of the school is. You can do this many ways. There's a lot of ways online that you can look that up. There's also some other resources that I'm going to provide in a couple slides where you can see the reputation of a school and talk to friends or family members. That really does help understand kind of the environment of the school and what it has to offer and what the reputation is like. And then like what schools offer the best program. I entered into like the career of vocational rehabilitation when I went to school, and it's a very niche market and there's not very many schools that offer that. So I went to the University of Wisconsin Stout, who was recognized, like highly recognized for their vocational rehabilitation program. There's only a few like of those programs throughout the United States. So it was important for me to look and see which schools offered that program. When you're looking at more general programs, there's going to be a lot of schools that offer that program. And that's when it's going to be important to look at the reputation of the school and find out if they are somebody that the industry recruits from. So the GI Bill comparison tool has a lot of functionality. There's a lot of amazing things you can do your research with the comparison tool. With the tool, you can search for schools, programs, and training providers by location, name, or type. And then you can take and compare up to 3 schools side by side. You can access detailed information about each institution, including tuition costs, graduation rates, and student support services. I know we just had a question on our Facebook page yesterday about a specific school, and I was able just to link the Facebook commenter right to the comparison tool to give them more information about the school that they were inquiring about. It's also going to estimate GI Bill coverage and potential out-of-pocket expenses, which is really important as you're planning school, because you're going to need to be able to budget for everything. So it helps you do that. You can also view feedback from beneficiaries who have attended the institution. So that's a really great functionality of the tool. And you can save and compare schools and programs. So an amazing tool as you do your research to help you guide you through the education journey. Another really great resource that you can use is the Department of Education College Scorecard. And this is going to provide you statistics on schools, graduation rates, average income after graduation, acceptance rates, what fields of study, and there's a lot more that you can explore with the Department of Education Scorecard. So the comparison tool is VA developed, and the Department of Education Scorecard is developed by the Department of Education. But that's a really important to look at, graduation rates and average income after graduation as you plan your career journey. So a lot of schools have open houses, or you can request to take a tour of the school. I know sometimes there's even virtual options to take virtual tours of the school. Maybe you're not sure if it's a school that's a little bit farther away. You're not sure if you want to invest in traveling to go visit the school if it's a couple states away. Maybe a virtual tour is a good way to start the research process for that. And each school that is approved for GI Bill benefits has a veteran school certifying official. Their name can actually be found on that GI Bill comparison tool. It's typically towards the bottom of the page when you're looking at specific schools, but there is the name of a certifying official at that school that you could reach out to get more information. And a lot of schools have a Veterans Resource Center. I know when I lived in Milwaukee, the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee had Maverick. Everybody has different acronyms for their Veteran Resource Center, but Maverick was a great hub for veterans to go in and hang out with other veterans and get some support and just study or develop friendships with other students on campus that were veterans. Some campuses have a Student Veterans of America chapter on campus. You're going to want to check and see if that's the case. They have a very good organization, and they have regional summits and national summits throughout the year where it's a lot of good camaraderie amongst student veterans. Another program that is available is the Vet Success on Campus. That is where a school has a counselor right on campus. I think there's 102 sites across the nation right now for that program. So the Vet Success on Campus works with veterans to help them with a lot of different things. So you might want to look up the Vet Success on Campus and see if there's one at the school that you plan on attending, if they have a representative. It's a VA employee that works for Veterans Benefits Administration. Networking with alumni, make sure that you're speaking with graduate students and fellow veterans who attended or who are currently enrolled in the school to hear about their firsthand experiences. I know I was just over at one of my son's friend's house, and I was talking to him, and he just became a nurse practitioner. And my nephew's actually looking at becoming a nurse practitioner as he finishes up his nursing degree. And so it was cool to talk to him about what his experience was like at the university that he attended. And he was telling me about, it's like mostly weekends. You go there for a weekend and do these courses, and then you do some online stuff. And so it was cool because now I'm sharing that information with my nephew who's trying to make some decisions about his career. So some additional resources outside of education service specifically, there's Vet Center. These are wonderful, wonderful community-based counseling centers. Sometimes there's a lot of scariness to maybe going to a VA facility. So they have some smaller community-based clinics and they have them in different locations. So they also have a mobile vet center that they'll bring their van out. I know in Milwaukee, they had a vet center counselor that would come out and meet with vets on campus. So the vets could kind of meet for counseling between their classes rather than having to travel to a specific center. But these are amazing resources. They do psychological services, professional counseling, and that does include the National Guard and Reserve components and their families. Another thing that I always like to talk about is the state benefits. And once we get to the frequently asked questions slide, this was something that was frequently asked within the registration questions, was what if I've run out of my federal VA education benefits? Each state typically has their own state veteran benefits. Currently where I reside in Minnesota, they have, I think, $15,000 in a lifetime that a veteran can utilize. And then in Wisconsin, where I used to live, they had up to 126 credits for the veteran. And then if you enlisted in Wisconsin, it was like for each of the family members as well. So there's some really good state benefits out there. And there is a link that Chris is going to be dropping into the chat with the link to each of the different state benefits. Another benefit is the American Council on Education. We also call it ACE. And we'll drop the link to the military guide, but really what the ACE does is tries to help veterans and military personnel get college credit based on their military training and occupation. So make sure that if you're going to look at a school that you see what credits they may accept. You may need to get your joint transcripts and be able to get some of your classes taken care of based on your military experience. The VA Personal Career Planning Service, that is specifically the eligibility for that is for people getting ready to separate or people that have separated in the last year can be eligible for Chapter 36, it's called. And that's going to help you just do some more of that career planning and looking at your interests and what you need to get where you want to go. The College Navigator is another great resource. That's going to help you find the right colleges for you. And then there's other non-VA resources, and that will link you to the above resources. So this webinar today is based on we have 3 guides. It's the series of GI Bill guides. And the first one is a guide to choosing your education pathway. So that's what this webinar is based on, that part 1 guide. We also have part 2 and 3. Part 2, a guide to understanding your benefits. And then part 3 is a guide to navigating your career. I just want to note that there are several ways to stay up to date on GI Bill benefits. We do have the GI Bill education on Facebook. We also have an email subscription service that you can sign up for. There is the website. And if you have any specific questions about your individual situation, a lot of times we get very specific individual situation, and that is a little bit hard for us to answer because we don't have all the access to look at your specific record right now. But if you send a message to at ask.va.gov, that's like a written correspondence where you send in a question to them and then they respond back. And then we also have a GI Bill hotline. So the number is listed there. It's just 888 GI Bill 1. And then there's also a feedback tool that we have that's available there. So next, we're going to move to the Q&A portion of the session. And first, I would just like to go through, and I went through all of the registrations and looked at the top like 6 themes that I saw in the questions that were asked. So I'm going to review those 6 questions first, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask some Q&A. So the first question that was very common was about the Rudisill decision. So the Rudisill decision was a Supreme Court decision that came out in April of 2024. And it's for people that had 2 periods of service, one of the periods qualifying for Montgomery GI Bill, and one of the periods qualifying for post 9/11 GI Bill. And it used to be that they had you relinquish the Montgomery GI Bill to take advantage of the post 9/11 GI Bill. And this court case is giving some of those months back to people that ended up relinquishing them. So you may be eligible for this. We have a very comprehensive website devoted to Rudisill, and it lays everything out very nicely. So Chris is going to go ahead and pop the link for the Rudisill in the chat. I think most of the questions that I saw on the registration will be answered if you go read that website. So if you could pop that in the chat. I also had a lot of questions come up about GI Bill extensions, and there is another webpage devoted to that. So you can drop that link in the chat for them, Chris. That will give you all the information on whether or not you could qualify for an extension. The third kind of most frequently asked question was in regard to international study. We do approve programs across the globe. The best way for you to find out if the programs that you're looking at internationally are approved is to use the GI Bill comparison tool. So if Chris, you could pop the link to the GI Bill comparison tool, and if you just do a basic search on Google of GI Bill comparison tool, you'll find it there too. Another question that was very, very, very frequent was GI Bill education service versus VRNE. So education service manages all of the VA education benefits. VRNE is a separate business line, separate from us, that facilitates veteran readiness and employment. So it's a very much an employment program. Although they do offer some opportunities for education to get to your employment goal. So if you could just pop the link to the VRNE program, that unfortunately we can't answer a lot of questions about VRNE because it's a very separate business line than us, but you can look at their website. In order to qualify for that program, you do have to have a service-connected condition. So that is just the 2 separate. We're education service today, and then vocational readiness and employment is a separate program, and we don't facilitate that program. We facilitate the post 9/11 GI Bill, the Montgomery, the DEA, Chapter 35, and the 1606. So, and that VRNE is called Chapter 31. So I just want to try and make that very clear that it's going to be difficult for us to answer any specific questions about veteran readiness and employment, because each situation is based on, you know, a lot of different contributing factors to a veteran's service-connected disability. One other question that we got was, I used all of my benefits, what now? I would highly encourage you to look in to see if you have state benefits available to you, if your state offers any veteran benefits. And then also sometimes we offer some programs, like there's a Skills Build, IBM Skills Build program that people can take advantage of, where you don't necessarily have to have any GI Bill left. And so and then maybe your service organization, if you're working with a service organization, may have some knowledge of other programs in your area. The last thing I'm going to talk about before we go ahead and take the questions from the chat is we had some spouse and children questions. So we do have a web page devoted to that for DEA, Chapter 35. So if Chris, you could drop a link to the DEA Chapter 35 into the chat, I think that will help answer a lot of questions that were coming in if you're the spouse or a child of a veteran or a service member. So I think that completes the questions that we got in the registration. And I am not able to see the questions. So I don't know if Chris or Otima, if you can find a question or two that I could try and answer.
Hey, Mark, we're sifting through a couple of the questions just to see if there's one. There are a few that you've already answered during the presentation, but we're going to just kind of keep sifting through here.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm going to try and, I don't know that if I'm still on camera.
Yes, we can still see you.
I see one. Will the GI Bill pay for dog trainer certifications? If it's an approved program at one of the facilities, yeah, you can take it. And if it's not currently approved, they would have to talk to if you find a place that has a dog training certification that you want to try and use, and they're not currently approved for GI Bill benefits, they can talk to their local state approving agency to see if they can get approved. I'm seeing another one. Will this session give a list of schools asking, because when a Google search is done for universities that accept GI Bill is done, schools populate, but when you dive in deeper, most of the schools do not accept GI Bill. You're going to want to use the comparison tool for getting the comparison tool is going to be the repository of all schools GI Bill. So you're going to want to use that comparison tool. I don't know if we can get Chris to put another link to that in the chat right now. I've got another question here. How do we check if we have any Montgomery GI Bill left? You can contact Ask VA or call the GI Bill hotline. So Ask VA is that website that you can go to and submit a written question, or you can call that GI Bill hotline and talk to a representative there. What are the limitations on getting multiple degrees certifications? Well, you have a certain number of months of entitlement. So, and you can only pursue one vocational goal at a time. So you can't be trying to get several different degrees at the same time. But you can, if you decide to start in one degree and then you decide that's not for you, you could always change. But there is typically 36 months of entitlement. Some programs offer an additional 12 months, but typically 36. And that's also dependent on your service as well. Yes, there is a cap on how much money VA will pay. It's not per credit, it's actually per calendar year. And so I think it's right around $30,000, maybe just under $30,000. So that's where that yellow ribbon is going to come into play. Some of the yellow ribbon schools will match anything over the cap. So if it's a private school or out of state tuition, the yellow ribbon, but the yellow ribbon is only approved at certain schools. So the school that you're going to has to be a yellow ribbon if you are trying to go over that cap. Oh, we have another question here. When my husband was medically discharged from the Army, he only had his GED. He was not aware of the option to transfer the GI Bill to me, his wife, or to our children who was born after. How can we get benefit transferred to dependents, and how can you involve spouses in the discharge process? Unfortunately, to transfer the entitlement, that has to be done before you get out of service. And it has to be somebody that's already in DEERS. So if there's like a child that's born, but if he's medically discharged from the Army and is service connected, there may be some eligibility for DEA. You may want to look into that. So I don't know if Chris, you have that link handy, but Chapter 35 DEA, you may want to see if there's some qualifications based on the medical discharge. Will my post 9/11 cover accelerated learning certificate? If it's approved, you might want to call for the certificate, the licensing and certification. They have a lot in the comparison tool. You can search in the comparison tool, but you can also call and see if it's something that they would look at approving for you. Why would we not receive a payment for July? I am a full-time student. That's very specific. I would encourage you to call the GI Bill hotline or reach out to Ask VA. If you were in school all of June, you should have got a payment at the beginning of July. But if that sounds very specific. Will this webinar recording slides be available after for those who joined late? We do plan on publishing a recording of this on our YouTube. This might be a good time, Chris, for us to pop in. We have a website devoted to our virtual events, and there's a list of the virtual events, and we don't have a registration link live for our next one. Our next webinar is going to be Education or GI Bill 101, and that will be available. The slides will just be part of the recording. What if we were 100% online, but technically overloading credits per term? Does that affect housing allowance? No, if you're online 100%, then you just get 1/2 of the national average, even if you're over full-time. Once you choose a school, how do you start the process to get GI Bill benefits? Once you choose a school, you want to talk to the school certifying official. Again, if you go on to the comparison tool and search the school that you're planning on attending, at the very bottom of the page, there's like a school certifying official contact information. You're going to want to reach out to them, and they're going to help make sure that you get, each institution is a little bit different on what they require for them to certify you, but they take care of certifying your enrollment to get the process going. Does the benefit for dependents still stop at age 26, or is there an extension available? There is a, it's, there, I have to look at that slide, unfortunately. It depends on the service member and when they got out. And I can get that information to you. Are you eligible for GI Bill as a Guard member of 10 years? There is reserve 1606 for reservists. But you would need to check and see if your active duty would, if you had any active duty time as a Guard member, if that would qualify you. Can you explain more about Yellow Ribbon? Sure. I apologize, Chris, because I don't know if you can grab the link to Yellow Ribbon from the website. I don't know that I included it in the links for you to provide. But this is going to be, there is a cap for GI Bill. It's like $29,000 or $30,000. It changes each year, but it's right around $29,000 or $30,000. So if you're going to a school that is above that cap, the school enters into an agreement with VA and it's only specific schools that decide to do this. And then, like, let's say like your tuition and fees gets up to $40,000, then they can agree to cover 5,000, and then VA will match that. So then you're going to be covered for the full tuition and fees. And I hope that we can find a link for you, or otherwise you can just Google GI or VA Yellow Ribbon, and there's a pretty comprehensive web page for that. Is there a way to request our paid benefits back from the school if they provided training that was not as high quality as expected? I know there's a way for you to get, if like a school just shuts down, because we had that happen a few years ago where like a few schools just shut down kind of overnight. I know there's a way to get some of the benefits back. You may want to read about extensions and see if there is an available, or you could reach out to Ask VA and ask that question, is what I would ask them. If I live in Texas but go to school in Colorado, which state would I want to check with? Like the state benefits are going to be through where you reside typically. So you're going to want to check with Texas. So would the post 9/11 GI Bill cover opportunity? Yeah, medical school or PA school, as long as you have entitlement. Like maybe you went into the military with a bachelor's degree and now you're wanting to get more of an advanced degree. Sure, that if you have entitlement, then that, and it's an approved school. What was the education GI Bill time limit to use the benefit? It depends on your service and when you got out. And we can, I don't have the dates right off the top of my head, but we have another presentation that we're going to be doing on August 6th called GI Bill 101 that goes through each of the benefits very thoroughly about all of the eligibility requirements and the dates. How do I use the GI Bill to help pay for a certificate course from a college instead of, I'm speaking to the colleges that accept the GI Bill, but the comparison tool isn't clarifying. So isn't clarifying certificates, and colleges are turning me away. So sometimes for those licensing and certifications, you're going to have to that out of pocket if it's not an approved certificate at the college. It has to be approved at their, like by the state approving agency to be paid for. The other thing that you could look at is paying for it out of pocket and then getting reimbursed. And we are going to do a webinar on licensing and certifications as well, specific to just licensing and certification. Where may we check for our GI Bill reward letter or check if it has shipped? You should just be able to go onto your VA account and the letters are right there. And I don't know if Chris, you could give maybe help with that. I'm not a veteran myself, but the letters are just in their VA profile, right?
On the VA app, you can download all your letters.
Thank you, Chris. If one started a program but wanted to change to another program, is there a time limit or procedure to change degree programs? You just have to be in communication with the certifying official at each of the schools, and they would guide you through that change in degree programs. No, Yellow Ribbon can only be used with the post 9/11 GI Bill. It cannot be used with Montgomery GI Bill. I think I already covered the post 9/11 GI Bill does cover medical school or PA school. Can I reestablish my GI Bill after 10 years plus from my retirement days based on health issues verified through my 100% disability rating? If you are 100% disabled, I would highly encourage you to explore the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. They can overlook some of those timelines. How can I find colleges in New York City that offer remote learning programs with minimal on-campus requirements? I'm having difficult finding hybrid college options. For example, when I attend San Francisco Film School, I was able to complete most of my coursework online and only had to be on campus for 1 week per semester. I'm looking for similar. You should check the GI Bill comparison tool. I think you can search it. I might be mistaken, but look at that GI Bill comparison tool. What are programs that extend VA GI Bill if you have 1 day left. There was Vet Tech, and that went away. So that was one program that you could utilize if you just had like 1 day of entitlement left. How do I find a list of trade schools that accept my GI? Again, that comparison tool is going to be a great resource. The other thing is we do have a Facebook page that was posted, the GI Bill Facebook page. We are going to be publishing a post, if it hasn't been published already, with the opportunity to ask more questions. So if you're on Facebook and you find us on there, you can always reach out on our Facebook page and ask a question on that post today, where we invite you to ask more questions. If you qualify for both GI Bill and VRNE, which should you use first? You should use VRNE first. Yeah, anything specific to veteran readiness and employment will need to go to the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. Looks like we're really wrapping up with the questions. If we didn't get to your questions, you can come to our Facebook page, and or if it's very specific to your individual situation, again, I don't know that you want to post that publicly on a Facebook form. So I would encourage you to reach out to Ask VA or calling the GI Bill hotline. There's a question about, I had brain surgery and radiation 10 years ago. I was unable to attend school for 11 months. I requested for a hardship, but the request was denied. How do I get my benefits extended? You can request an extension, and then if they denied it, there is an appellate process. There's instructions on the denial letter of how to file an appeal. There's like 3 different levels of appeals that you can file. So you can do like a supervisory review all the way up to the BVA, the Board of Veterans Appeals. All right, it looks like people are dipping out. There will be a questionnaire that'll pop up on your screen. We would really appreciate your feedback. It helps us strengthen our future webinars. So I hope you all take the opportunity to provide us with our feedback, and we'll get that registration link posted pretty quickly on our Facebook page, and then another email will come out with the registration link for the next one coming up August 6th on GI Bill 101. So I just want to really thank you for your time and attention today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next one.